Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching this. Welcome to the latest edition of Lunchtime Morning Tea Time Learnings. I'm delighted to be joined by Sarah-Louise Anderson from Ray White, Sales and Marketing Consultant. I'm going to say Queensland because I can't pronounce the name of your office, which I'm going to let you pronounce. And Sarah-Louise is also a fully licensed auctioneer as well. So thank you so much for joining me. Just pronounce your office for me. Save my embarrassment. What was that?
Ray White Maroochydore is us, yeah.
Thank you. And don't even ask me to spell that because I'm not even going there. But welcome. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm really interested in your story. So I subscribe to the Elite Agent magazine, and you had a feature article on you, which I found really inspiring, and it really resonated with me because 30 or about 50 years ago, actually, my dad had a kidney transplant, and he was one of the only ones to survive. And I think you've got the most amazing story to share with listeners and people watching this in the UK about your incredible resilience to go through what you've been through, because I think you've been through 7 surgeries over the course, if not more. And from my point of view, I know a lot of people look fine on the outside, but on the inside are really struggling. So I thought this is great to have you on as a guest to share your story, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So first of all, how did you get into agency? What made you become a licensed real estate agent in Australia?
It started actually when I was quite young. I was a personal assistant for an agent for Ray White, actually. And I just sort of enjoyed it. It just was, you're doing something different every day. You're talking to different people and you're actually helping people, like shelter and safety and, all of those things is what we deal with every day. And I found a lot of fulfillment and joy out of that and helping people, find their new homes, selling properties where they've raised children and all that sort of stuff. So I sort of naturally segued into becoming an agent. So I was a PA initially, a personal assistant, and then obviously got my license and became an agent, and then that obviously then segued into becoming an auctioneer on top of that as well.
Okay, so in the UK, we don't need to be licensed. So what sort of things do you have to go through to become a licensed agent there?
It's getting your sales certificate isn't exceptionally difficult. So you just go through I think it's a 4-day course, learn the fundamentals of real estate, how to process contracts, paperwork, all of that sort of stuff. Become a certificate. At that point, you can sell property, and then you can work underneath a licensee. So there has to be a licensee who, manages the trust accounts and the administration and all of that sort of stuff. So the way that we work it in Australia is we're usually employed by an office, say Ray White Maroochydore, and then we have a lead licensee and we operate under the lead licensee over here.
Okay, and just to give people context, Ray White's home to 12,000 property professionals and 1,000 franchises over 11 countries. So It is a pretty big, well-known, established business that I know is featured in Lux listings with Gavin Rubenstein. So I think quite a lot of people in the UK have been glued to that. I think we're series as well.
Yeah.
So what made you join Ray White? Why them?
The Ray White company is a 4th generation company. And look, we're a very big company, but we're definitely a very family orientated company. Our offices are owned, by individuals. That we're corporate and we're big, but fundamentally speaking, the belief behind Ray White comes from core family. So, Dan White is 4th generation and Brian White's involved in everything that we do. And so for me, the heads of the company care about the individual growth of everybody, not just the office space. They care about the individual agents. They care about the support teams. They actually really genuinely care. So the company itself what it was built on was my reasoning for not so much joining Ray White, because I kind of fell into Ray White, but it definitely my reason for staying.
So you talk a lot there about caring. So what do they do about caring for people? How's the culture there?
Yeah, so on a corporate level, there is a lot of training. There's a lot of support. You know, Ray White's brilliant in the regards of just the training that they provide when you're new into the industry is second to none. And then coming down into an office level, like our team, we're a very big team. So our team, I think internal 35 odd or so. Very big sales team, but we're a very close sales team. And I think I mentioned in my article, one of the things that actually got me through kidney failure was the support, the unconditional support of my team, and the greater network on the Sunshine Coast as well. You know, I had a lot of support from just friends through Ray White. I did actually have another surgery late last year, and you know, again, the teams were the ones that took me to the hospital and come and visit me and picked me up and bought me food and, you know, all of those things that you really need. They were the ones that did it. So, and that doesn't start from an office level. You know, that type of culture starts at the top. And when you talk, when we go to conferences and the White family's talking, you know, everything they do is about us, the employees, and how they can better support us to grow and become better agents, which I love. It's every training session that we go to is so meticulously thought out, and how can we best be supporting, you know, our sales teams and our property management teams and our administration teams, everything that they do.
Okay, thank you. So you talked about a lot of training for new starters. Mm-hmm. So what sort of induction program do they have there that you have to go through?
Oh, there's so much. You know, they do training days for, like, you know, real beginners, how to run the industry, how to cold call, how to prospect, how to build a database, how to run a listing. Like, they take it all the way back. You can walk into the company as someone who's never operated in real estate at all and have training from day one. You know, they have multitudes of programs at different levels, you know, entry-level programs, and then taking your next step within the tiers of, you know, like the award tiers that the companies run, all the way through to top tier, you know, supporting lead agents that have been in the business for 35 years and training sessions on how to grow their team. So right from day one, you can walk in, learn how to prospect, learn how to call. You know, you provided with the tools and the programs and essentially everything that you need. So sometimes I think a lot of people come into the industry and they don't know how to effectively cold call. They don't know how to build a database. Really simple things you would think, but not really when you're actually in it, when you're actually doing it. So, and they support that. You know, there's I think they hold the rookie training program like every quarter, you know, so every year you can come in and do all of that. I did that when I first started, and the head of it at the time, the head of the training program at the time, is now one of my best friends. You know, she lives on the Sunshine Coast as well, and we spend every Monday every Monday morning we go for a walk and get coffee, and you know, that's been 5.5 years now. So yeah, it's and she's come with me on my journey of it as well, you know, come with me on it. And again, that just comes down to the culture of supporting the new guys and helping young agents build careers in this industry.
That's great. So any good tips on prospecting then?
Just pick up the phone. Just do it. It's a volume game. Like, it's really a volume game. It's so funny. You know, you obviously get new guys coming in there sort of like, what do you do? And it's like, you just do. You know, the more you do, the more you get out of it. It's really plain and simple. Just make the phone call with the intention of, how can I help this person?
Spot on. Love it. So do you have, I mean, I don't call them prospecting sessions anymore. I've come away from it because a lot of people don't like the language prospecting. They get scared of cold calling. So I call it creating business relationships, because everybody wants to create business relationships. So
that's a pretty good mental shift on something that most agents don't want to do.
It's very interesting when I do my training sessions and you ask people, so how many of you like prospecting? And none of them put their hands up. But how many like creating business relationships? And they put their hands up. So there you go. That's what we're doing today. We're creating relationships, new relationships, and we're asking how we can help them and make a difference. So
essentially, I often say to the new guys, if you go into every interaction just with the fundamental of how can I help this person, it's so much easier than trying to pick up the call and saying, hey, do you want to sell your house?
Good. So do you have an ideal day there then, where you do like an AM and PM session where you do prospecting in the morning and you're out in the afternoon?
Yeah, I run ideal weeks. So I learned, I can't even remember who I learned it from. I learned this concept of creating an ideal week of theming days. So, on Monday, obviously you're doing buyer callbacks and processing, contracts from the weekend and all of that sort of stuff. And then Tuesday, we're doing usually Monday you're doing buyer callbacks, compiling your reporting for the week for your sellers. Tuesday, you're sending out your reports, and all of that sort of stuff. Wednesday, we have our in-house sales team meeting on Wednesday morning. So quite often we're going through, our listings and where our numbers are at and, where we need to pick up and all of that sort of stuff. So quite often Wednesdays afternoons are tidying up from the weekly sales meeting. I tend to list my new properties online on Tuesdays and Wednesdays as well, because there's quite a fair bit of administration work, processing photos and ad text and all of that sort of stuff. Usually first thing in the morning, I do sit down and make 10 phone calls though. Every morning, sit down, 10 phone calls.
And who will those phone calls be to?
Do you guys run like a concept called pipeline over there? Like people that you are aware maybe coming? Yeah. Usually those types of people. So, people that you need to following up on appraisals or on appointments, people who are active but maybe aren't on the market just yet. 10 of those a day, that's 50 a week. 10 a day is achievable, 50 is overwhelming. And then, yes, obviously usually in the afternoons we're out and about, inspections, appraisals, appointments, open homes. And then, Thursdays is usually following up on the weekly appraisals, making sure your numbers are correct, you've done enough appointments for the week. And then obviously Friday is gearing up for Saturday, whether it be auctions or open homes or whatever you're doing on a Saturday.
Okay. So one of the people or a lot of people find distractions get in their way of an ideal week. So how do you keep on it and focused and make sure your distractions don't get in your way and you stay at it? Because it's very easy to get distracted these days.
It's very easy to get distracted. One of the big things that I learned really early on was turn your notifications off on your phone. Most of us get distracted on social media, so I don't have my social media notifications on. I don't have my text message icons on. I don't have my email icons on. If I'm sitting down to do 10 phone calls, log out of your emails. Yeah, it's really simple little things like that. And it does help create hyper focus. And once you start building the structure and the habit, it is easier. But it is very easy to get distracted into the pit of social media, particularly reels. Like reels are so addicting. And an hour's passed and you've done nothing productive. So turning off your social media notifications and email notifications was a huge one for me.
Brilliant. Thank you. So chronic renal failure. I know, go from one extreme to another.
I recommend it.
I'm sure. So please, share your story. And, I mean, I think it's amazing what you've done and how resilient, and the amount of sales that you've done, and the amount of I think it was over 22 million pounds of transactions, or that's probably about 11 million pounds of transactions in the UK. That would be 12 million pounds. 26 sales, going through what you were going through. I think it's absolutely a credit to you. So please share your story, and it's amazing the support that you've had. But from me, the reason why I think it's important to share it is loads of people are suffering on the outside, but you don't see it. Sorry, they're suffering on the inside, but on the outside you really don't see it. And I think this is very worthwhile talking about it, getting the message out there that there is help out there, there is support out there, and communication is really important. So share the story, please, and I'll shut up.
Yeah. Look, I was sick right from very young. So I was not diagnosed until I was about 18, 19 years old, but I was very sick, and it was very evident that something was wrong. From a very, very young age. I lived in a very remote town in Australia, very small little town, about 4,000 people, not really much medical support. And then we moved to a city called Darwin, which is the very, very northern tip of Australia, which, again, not huge, not a big city, nothing in comparison to the likes of Sydney or Melbourne or something like that. And then we landed here on the Sunshine Coast when I was about 14. Still quite sick, but sort of managing. When you're a teenager, the world isn't sort of as demanding of you. You can get away with having a couple of days off here and there. And it really wasn't until I was about 18, 19 that I started getting really, really sick. And I think it was, once you sort of step out of school and you're working full time and you start to become like a functioning member of society, I wasn't resting as much as I was when I was younger, and it really became obvious that I was quite a sick person. I was very lucky to have landed where I did, and I found an incredible man by the name of Stuart Collins. He was my diagnosing doctor, and I was 18, 19 years old, and he just was relentless with me. I think I'm his youngest patient. By far would have been his youngest patient, at least back then. And he has saved my life more times than, I couldn't even tell you how many times he's saved my life. It was a phone call away if I ever needed to go into hospital. We had game plans in place. Like I was getting, at one point, I think he found 1,000 kidney stones in one of my very, very first surgeries way back then, which he took all of that out. And then it became very evident that the kidney was very damaged, but it still had high function. But at that point, it was he essentially said to me at 18, he's like, this will eventually die. He's like, we're going to have to take this out eventually, but we're going to try and keep it in for as long as we possibly can. I think when I was about 21 or so was my first major surgery. I had a reimplantation and a kidney reconstruction. So he was essentially trying to preserve the functionality of the organ for as long as he possibly could. Game plan on that was, 10, 15 years. We didn't get there, but got about 8 years out of it. So I had quite a few surgeries, like stents in, stents out, stones forming, blockages forming, scar tissue forming. And I think for a long time, it didn't really, because I was just used to it, like I'd just always done it. It never really resonated to me that it was different or a challenge. It just always was. And when I was 24, I landed in with the team at Ray White Maroochydore. I think by that stage I'd had 4 or 5 surgeries. Like I'd had my main reconstruction and then just a couple of just had some piggyback surgeries off the back of that, and landed in with my team at Ray White Maroochydore. And I think since I've been there, So I've had 13 surgeries. I think when I joined, I was at 4 or 5 or something like that. And just the support that I had in a place of competitiveness was incredible. It was incredible. It was incredible. There was never a day that I was made to feel guilty. There was never a day that, if I was unwell, I would just call and it would be, it was okay. There was circumstances where I was sick at work and, I had to leave work, and everybody just surrounded me in so much support and love. And it probably wasn't until I joined that team that I sort of realized how significant it was. I think when you're a sick person, or when you're a chronically ill person, and when you've been ill either your whole life or for a very long time, you actually don't realize what it's like to not be sick. And vice versa, the people who are supporting you don't realize what it's like to be sick. It's very overwhelming to watch somebody be ill, but it's very easy to forget that the ill person actually can't leave. So the support person can go home and have a break. The support person can go and have a sleep. But, me, there would be days that I'd be in hospital for, weeks, and they wake you up every 2 hours, so you wouldn't be sleeping for every 2 hours. And I think one of the big things that's not spoken about is the really hard part about the fact that there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. I can't change this. I can't be a different body. It doesn't matter if I'm in Australia or the UK or on the moon, or, I'm never going to be in a different body, and I'm always going to have this. And when I started, I was probably in my mid-20s when that really started to creep in. And that was the hardest part about all of it, like confronting that. And we don't talk about it. Chronic illness it's a secret. It's a let's not talk about how hard it is. Let's not show vulnerability. Let's not show weakness. But with my team and what has been created on the back of having a chronic illness, that wouldn't have happened if I didn't. But it takes a lot to be the sick person and go, hey, I need help. It is hard, and it's not talked about. It's not even really talked about in the medical industry, to be honest with you. I was a very young person to have kidney failure, and I would go in there and, even the nurses would be like, "You're so young." I was like, yeah, yeah, I am. And there's not much, I can't do anything about it. So it was really, I can't even say how much love and support came out of, these people that were around me in the working industry. And, I do agree it was a lot of hard work. That year of 2021, I was out of action for probably 6 months. The year before, I would have been out of action for 4 months, and then on top of that, I was at an auction 2 weeks after my kidney came out, and then another auction 4 weeks after my kidney came out. And people often go, "Oh, that's insane." But the support that I had meant that I was able to do that. There was one auction that I had, and every single member of my team was there, every single one. And they were helping me. I didn't have to, there were stairs at that particular property, and there was no way that I was getting up the stairs. And they were there, and there was no catch. There was no, no expectation to return the favor. It's just people, good people, kind people were there helping me. And what my last couple of years would not have happened if it wasn't for that type of mentality. And I do have a fundamental belief that mentality has come from the Ray White culture. But a lot of people say, I've had people say to me, like, "Sarah, how did you do it?" And I do sometimes just kind of say, "Oh, like, I didn't, like, we did," and I don't think my team even really understands what they did for me. Yeah, I don't think, unless you are a chronically ill person who has been stuck in that, I don't think you can grasp what it actually means to have that kind of support so that you can have freedom, because a lot of chronically ill people don't get that freedom and don't get that support. And I still have a career. I was sick through my entire 20s. You know, I'm 30 now. I was diagnosed with this at 18 and I didn't have my kidney out until I was 28. But I still have a career, which I know that most chronic ill people can't even fathom, being the ill person and having a career. Like it's not fathomable to a lot of people.
Okay, you've left me speechless. You know, sadly, I've been through this with my dad, and my wife passed away 2 years ago with terminal cancer. And my wife got diagnosed and got told she had under a year, and she managed an extra 4.5 years. And her oncologist would go, he was very eminent, and he would travel around the world. And he would go, got this lady, everybody else has got the same pills with her, you know, same treatment. They've gone, she's still here. And a lot of it was to do with mindset. And, you know, Sam was a fighter and she didn't want to go anywhere. And what I'm fascinated with is your mindset. I mean, how do you keep going the whole time, you know, to go through 13 surgeries, to most probably miss all your, you know, 20s, you know, and everything out there? How do you keep going? How do you keep that resilience? How do you know, because your mind is a very, very powerful tool. And I know being a support person, you know, and it's brilliant for support that you had, because I felt helpless. You know, I wanted to do as much. You know, my wife couldn't get up and down stairs, and it was just absolutely horrendous to watch, because there was nothing I could do. But your mind is so powerful. How do you keep going through everything you've been through and be the inspirational person you are?
Look, I've had this comment, and I've had close friends that have had, you know, sudden surgeries and stuff like that, where they say to me, like, how are you so strong? And my answer to it, and it probably sounds a little bit contradictory here, but my answer to that is I actually wasn't. It wasn't until I wasn't strong that I got the support. It wasn't until people started seeing, right? Because you made a comment before, you know, we can be sick on the inside, but I've never looked like a sick person. I think at one point I dropped down to about 46 kilos and like I was going in and out of septic shock. Like I was pretty sick then. And you would probably look at me and go like, that chick needs to eat some food, because I couldn't eat. But it actually wasn't until I stopped being strong, or stopped projecting being strong. It really wasn't until I accepted that this is my fate and I can't change it, that I probably got that level of support, because most people didn't know. Like even now, most people go, what? You know, and it's not that I was trying to pretend like I wasn't sick. I never once pretended like I wasn't sick. It's just, it wasn't a visual thing. You know, it wasn't a visual thing. You know, someone loses an arm and you can see that that person doesn't have an arm, but someone loses a kidney. How do you even see that? And so I think it was very lonely until I stopped trying to pretend to the rest of the world that I wasn't sick. But again, that was probably around that same time to my comment before about in my mid-20s that I probably actually came to that realization. But again, I look back at, you know, I'm 30, but I look back at being 18. I look back at being 16. You know, I look back at being 8. And what these people were telling this young person, no concept, absolutely no concept what it even meant. And so I think resilience, I do get called resilient a lot, but there was a lot of encouragement that came from the people around me as well. And there was a lot of, it wasn't until I started showing the vulnerability and the people came to help and I realized that I actually wasn't alone, that I probably could do it. But that's a very hard thing to do, when you're coming in and out of, I've nearly died. I don't even know how many times, I've been so sick. And it really wasn't until I embraced it and kind of just accepted the fact that that's who I was. But then on the flip side of it, you come out of it, right? And I no longer have chronic kidney failure because my other kidney works fantastically. And then my whole personality was a sick person. And I did have this time period of where I've gone, I borderline don't even know how to not be a sick person again. So like there is a flip side of it as well. And having been a sick person and now being a well person and having freedom and not being in pain and not having surgeries, it's a very different life. And it was very sudden, this changed within like 8 months. So, I mean, I didn't really have a choice. It was keep going or die at times. And it really wasn't until I accepted that it changed, really. And it was really interesting because the sicker I got, the more support I needed, and the more support I got, and then the more successful I got. And don't get me wrong, I was actually doing a catch-up appointment with my doctor a couple of weeks ago, and he made a comment to me because I've sold properties from, being sick. I've been in there waiting for scans and waiting for tests and, on the phone and sending emails and doing all of this sort of stuff. He did make a comment to me the other day, and he just goes, like, I don't know about you. But it just was, if I didn't want that to be my whole life. I didn't want to be a sick person forever. I didn't want to be a sick person that didn't have the life that I wanted. So it did fundamentally come down to I don't accept. There was a certain degree of I don't accept that. That's not all I am, and that got me through a lot of it. But yeah, it really wasn't until I just admitted it and accepted it that all of that changed. But it's the hardest thing to do, right? Like, how do you accept that at 20-something?
100%. And I think it's the biggest lesson that you can share, acceptance.
Yeah.
So I've really struggled the last year, really, really struggled. I've had loads of dark thoughts and been to places where, honestly, I don't want to be. So I've got help. I've been to a therapist, and there's 3 words that have really resonated with me: and acceptance, understanding, and acknowledge. Understanding the reasons why you're feeling like it, acknowledge it, accepting that actually you will get these feelings, but they will pass. And it's acknowledging, that you get them and understanding how you can deal with them when they come along and what other techniques you can use. So I think acceptance is a massive, massive word, not only when it comes to, chronic failures and what you're talking about, but actually in business as well. Because I know when I was an agent many, 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 many years ago, and I had very high expectations. And when my colleagues didn't have those same high expectations, I found it really, really hard.
Yeah.
And then I learned the word acceptance, and I had to accept the fact that not everybody's got the same high standards and expectations that I had. And as soon as I did that, I became a different leader, I suppose. So I think that's a really, really, really important point. So thank you. I'm almost in tears here listening to the story. So thank you. So look, I'm grateful for your time because I know it's getting on in the evening, and I can see the sun's still shining there. You're very lucky because it's raining at the moment. There's just a couple of things I wanted to end up on. So I know you've got a always learning mindset. So what do you mean by that? And what are the things that you're learning that you recommend? Is there any good podcasts? Are there any good agents, people that should be following in the UK? Are there any good books people should be reading that you recommend?
podcasts, I listen to Stephen Bartlett quite a lot. And I listen to a lot of I find him very candid, and I probably started listening to him maybe about 6 months ago. And I mean, I didn't have, on top of kidney failure, I didn't have the world's most fantastic childhood. You know, I was just sort of in a place of just not born into a place of greatness. Anyway, and I found, you know, his podcasts talk about these things that we don't talk about. So I actually started listening to them, and there's a lot of them there where, you know, a lot of successful people who have had really big careers that he talks to sort of say the same thing to what I felt, which is once I started accepting that that's what it is, that's kind of when it changed. So would recommend that. There's quite a few of them in there that I think he releases one every week, but I listen to him nearly religiously. I've listened to so many, I can't even tell you what my favorite one would be. For agents, sometimes I think getting away from all of the complications from the industry, like the industry can get quite complicated, and if you were an agent, you probably know it's actually quite a simple job. You know, there's calling, there's listing, there's negotiating, there's selling, right? And I don't know, I know that the process is a little bit different over there because Australia is apparently very different in how we do things, but the job itself is quite simple, and quite often, you know, you said to the comment before, do you have any tips on prospecting? Like it just comes down to finding a way to encourage yourself to make those calls. And with coaches, like we've got a few coaches within our business that we operate with, but it's finding the ones that resonate with you, because there's a million different personality types out there. You know, there's countless types of clients, there's countless types of agents. And I think it's really, if you can work out who you are as a person on an individual level, you can actually work out how you can best help the client in front of you. And whether you're a brand new agent or you're a 30-year agent, if you just help that person, chances are you will find success out of that, because that's really what we're here for. In regards to, a lot of my training has been through Ray White, and a lot of the people that I aspire to and talk to, and, you know, they're not the big flashy showy guys. They're sort of the more humble, simple, you know, like my boss is the single most incredible person, you know, I've ever met. He's given me everything. He owed me nothing and gave me everything. And he helps us keep it simple. He helps us just do the basics every day, because if you do the basics every day, you'll get there in the end. Really good book called Good to Great. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Jim Collins, yeah.
And that was one of the first ones I listened to by Stephen Bartlett, The Infinite Game. He did a podcast with, is it Simon Sinek? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did a podcast with them. That's a really good podcast, I think, particularly for real estate agents to listen to, because The Infinite Game obviously goes into like finding your why. I've read that and I've listened to that podcast a couple of times now. And that often brings things back home to me to go, okay, you know, this is why we do what we do, particularly when, I don't know what it's like been in the UK the last couple of years, but the real estate market here the last 2 years has been like insane. Like we've been chasing our tails for 2 years essentially, and it's now starting to cool off again. So we're really looking to go back to basics and going back to these books and going back to the fundamentals of why do I do what I do. You know, I find that quite helpful for me on the days that you don't want to make those 10 calls.
100%. There's another really good podcast from the UK called the High Performance Podcast. And they interview loads of business people, entertainment people. sports people from majority is UK. Again, I think Stephen Bartlett's been on that as well. But again, exceptional, all their learnings. And you're right, where people started from and where they've ended up is incredible. So their stories are amazing. And I'm sure you've got similar people doing the similar podcasts over in Australia as well.
Oh, we don't seem to have as much juice as you guys have. We just don't seem to have as much. I don't know if it's that Australians don't talk. I don't know. We just don't seem to have as much juice as what you guys have.
Okay. Well, I'll send you the link to the High Performance podcast.
That'll be good.
It is exceptional, really, really good. So one of the final things then I want to discuss with you. In the UK, I'm going to alienate all my audience now. 95% of estate agents have no stay in touch policy. So when they want to get a client for life, literally most of their clients end up in witness protection after they bought from them because they never hear from that estate agent. So any good tips to have a stay in touch policy that you use that actually?
A lot of my clients are now actually my friends. Look, repeat business is the single most cheapest way to get business, right? We talk about marketing, we talk about doing this, and we talk about spending money on that and doing this and doing that. Again, this just comes back to calling these people. People want to feel like you care. People want to feel like it's about more than just a commission check at the end of the day. And that's real estate is to me, right? Like I said very early on, real estate to me is it's your safety, it's your home, it's where you put your kids at night, it's where you sit down at the dinner table and talk as a family. And so real estate is about so much more than the dollar value that the house sells for. So having a follow-up, 3-month follow-up. See, I don't know if you guys have CRM systems over there, but we've got like audit trails in our CRM system that just set us tasks lists, and we just call those people and catch up with them. We do client nights, we'll do like wine tasting nights or movie events or something like that. Even sending them like a handwritten Christmas card or something like that. I've got people that I ran into the first ever contract that I did as a solo agent. I ran into them on the street the other day and was talking to them for like 15, 20 minutes, and it is important. And as you progress, and I think probably, I don't know what it's like over in the UK, but if you're in the industry for 2 years, 5 of you started on the same day, chances are there's probably only 2 of you left. So if you actually do keep in contact, like 24 sales or something, if you keep in contact with those 24 people every year over the course of a career, people stay in houses in Australia. I don't know what it's like over there, but on average 7 years, so if you think about it, I think that's a mind shift change from transactional to repeat business is actually the easiest business. I've read something somewhere, God knows where I read it now, that was, car yards don't make money off the first car that they sell. They make money off the second car that they sell to that family or to that person because of how much money they spend on marketing to get you in the door. And then they try to retain you as a loyal person to that particular car brand, like thinking of it like that. Yeah. And it comes down to if you actually care about these people and you have the conversations that you need to have to build relationships with them, that becomes easier.
Yeah. And I think you summed it up very well. I think too many agents see a sale as a one-off transaction rather than building a relationship where you obtain that client for life and they recommend you to their friends, their family, their colleagues and neighbours because you give them an exceptional experience.
Yeah. And you care. Like I said at the start, change prospecting to relationship building, change transaction to a relationship.
Brilliant. Look, I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you very, very much. If people want to get hold of you, how do they do that?
You can send me an email. I think I'm pretty on my social media. My notifications are off, so I might reply a little bit slowly. I do check it. My email is there. So yeah, just feel free to reach out. And if people are listening and they do want to, talk, about this whole chronic illness thing. Like, I've got friends that I do talk to about this a lot, because it's until you've been there, like you can't know, like you just can't know. And probably the same as being the support person, right? I'll never know. I hope I never know what it means to be a support person, because I don't think I would be very good at it.
Well, look,
So,
you've been an unbelievable, amazing guest. So thank you so much for your time. I'm really, really grateful, and thank everybody for watching and listening. And I look forward to speaking to you again and staying in contact with you. And everybody, the next podcast will be out in the next couple of weeks. So thanks very much for your time. Thank you.
worries.
Bye.
Thank you.